All right. Welcome, everyone. Apologies for the little bit of a late start. I just noticed that there were a lot of people starting to come into the session, so we wanted to just give it a minute or two more. Want to say, again, just thank you and welcome to joining today's foundational level out-of-home office hours for September. I'm Scott Fischetti, and as always, I'm joined today by Brian Schopper, who's probably on mute right now, but just wanted to introduce him. He'll be coming in a little bit later and doing the walkthrough. Typically on these foundational sessions, we're trying to build on the advanced sessions that we do, and that's what we are doing today here. We want to build on the session that we had last week, and in case you missed it, we were joined by Julie Falkers from Intermix, our development partners at Intermix. Julie's VP of Out-of-Home Media Solutions, and she did a terrific job of walking us through and talking about play spaces. It's now starting to come into the Insight Suite, and the data and audiences are starting to become available. And so we wanted to get ahead of that and make sure our members we're just aware of the terminology with how we look at place-based and when inventory gets submitted, what do we do, what do we look at, and just how that whole process happens. So I'll give you, before we jump off this call, I'll let everybody know where you can find that if you missed it. It's basically on our website, but I'll have a screenshot and I'll show you where you can see that. But again, good session that really helped form that background. So today, in building on that, what we wanted to do is to help our members understand, how to explore play space within the Insight Suite. So where can you go? Where can you find it? Is there anything unique about it when you're starting to filter and look at it? And there are a couple things. We also wanted to show you how you can look at it in terms of the audiences that are available. And just know that more and more audiences around play space will become available soon. And then just demonstrate, like any other piece of inventory, any other media type like roadside, how you can use that and include that in a plan. And then, as always, and probably most importantly, answer any questions that anyone has and try to answer as many of them as we can. That said, if you do have questions, please put them in the question widget within the Zoom platform. It just makes it easier for us to track, and sometimes if they're in the chat, they may get lost because there's maybe sometimes other chat going on and things like that. So just want to say that up front. And so before we jump into the Insight Suite, I just want to give a couple of quick overviews, touch on a couple of things high level that we talked about last week, and then I'll hand it off to Brian. But as you may know or may not know, we started the pilot program probably a year ago or more with the 30 pilot partners, and we learned a ton through that. I mean, we learned that we are where we are today because of the pilot program that we worked with, and understanding just the things we need to do in order to accurately and adequately account for and measure place-based. And you can see in the bottom of the screen here, there's just a host of different venue types that we're able to measure now. So from airports to entertainment venues, gas stations, malls, movie theaters, even parking lots. I know we have some members, and some of the inventory we'll look at today is kind of parking lot inventory, as well as transit stations. So that's one thing to note. Previously we measured transit station that was part of fleet, but it's actually now, if you're looking for that type of inventory, you'll find it as part of play space. So that's one key thing to note, and one key change to notice. But as of today, there's 35 networks in there. We have, and this is changing day by day. There's 35 networks, 60 place types, over 90,000 venues. And you'll see once we get into the Insight Suite, as of today, we're just shy of 200,000 units that are mapped in the Insight Suite. Again, there's a subtlety right now of kind of the metrics along with those units being incorporated into the Insight Suite. This slide should look somewhat familiar. I know we've showed it in terms of roadside, and that's a good thing, right? That there's some similarities to it. But definitely place-based. And again, if you didn't join last week's session, I encourage you to do that, because again, I'm not going to go too deep into this slide, but the idea of measuring place space, a lot, we need to look at like the venue itself. We need to look at the circulation and then understand the circulation within the venue and apply that to the frame circulation. So there's a difference in how we look at the circulation and apply it to, and just really understanding, like how people move within an environment and what are the reasons that they're there for. They all account for kind of the impressions within a particular venue or venue type. And even some of the data, obviously we are usually leveraging mobile data and, the pedestrian and vehicular data that we're collecting for roadside, but we're also able to leverage a lot of first-party data. So if our members have things like beacons or transaction data or ticket data, we're able to use that in addition to some of the other data that we're accounting for to create this holistic picture of what's going on in these environments. So again, like I said, the other session goes a little bit deeper into all of that. Really, the focus of today is helping our members understand where to access this data within the Insight Suite. And just really quickly, Brian's definitely going to go in a little deeper in all this, but you can find it in the same places you'll find roadside, right? So going into the Insight Suite and going into the media placement, you'll see place-based there as a checkbox. And then there are, like I said, a few different things that may be slightly unique to place-based that help you filter more. So there's filters for place type, placement type, place name. So those are some areas where we'll take some time and make sure everybody's aware as we look through the Insight Suite on where you're going to be able to access this data. So just want to hand it off to Brian and let him take us through this. But before I do, Brian, just want to check in and see if there were any questions that came in before we do jump into the.
Yeah, no, nothing that I saw come in.
Great. Okay. And that said, as Brian is taking control of the screen and getting up the Insight Suite, I just want to say, if you do have questions, like I said, please feel free to ask them. We will, do our best to answer them in the moment and do our best to get to as many questions as we can. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to Brian.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Scott. So as Scott mentioned, there's some really cool things about PlaySpace within the Insight Suite. Just sort of in the way that you go about accessing it and finding it and interacting with it. And it's actually not all that different than how you interact with roadside. If you've used the Insight Suite at all or before, you're probably familiar with how to sort of explore through the roadside inventory. And like I said, exploring PlaySpace is really not that different. So I'm just going to start, let me head up to this filter inventory tab here. Right now we're looking, you can see over in the right-hand corner over here, we're looking at about 740,000 spots in the whole US here. And as Scott mentioned in the beginning, there's just about 200,000 place-based spots included in that. So if you've been in the Insight Suite really anytime in the last couple months, more even, you've likely seen place-based just kind of in passing. But let me just show you kind of where you can go to look at that specifically. And this is a feature that can, or a filter that can be used to achieve other things as well, but it's very helpful for getting to just place-based. So in the filter inventory tab here, under media and placement, this media class filter right here, if you open this up, this breaks down the basically four different types of just different classes of media that we have. So roadside, place-based, and then fleet, dynamic, and scheduled. And what you can do using this filter here is you can say if you wanted to look at just roadside, you could exclude these other media types here. But for our purposes today, we'll be taking a look at just place-based. So I'll select that one. But you can also use this, say you wanted to look at, fleet is still being worked into the Insight Suite and it's not fully integrated just yet. But say you wanted to look at, just place-based and scheduled fleet, you could do that, or, roadside and dynamic fleet. So you can use this to kind of select or deselect whole classes of media sort of at the high level first before you get any deeper into your filtering. So let me just apply that. So we'll take a look at just the place-based inventory that's in the Insight Suite right now. And also, as Scott mentioned, and I think I said earlier, there's about 200,000 spots in here. Some of them are not fully, or don't have full measures added in here just yet. So the metrics over here on the right-hand side are reflective of the units in the place-based category that do have measures. And we'll go and we'll look at just those today. And then a little bit later, actually, we'll take a look at how, if you've got some place-based inventory yourself and it's the measures aren't loaded in here just yet, maybe some kind of workaround scenarios or workflows that you could use to still sort of derive some value from this and from the audience data that's in here while you're still waiting on measures to be fully loaded up. So yeah, you can see the spots over here are still discovering. Let me just show a couple of these other filters that are really, really specific to just place-based. I've sort of mentioned them in passing before, but never really talked about them because we haven't done a place-based scenario just yet. And these three filters here down at the bottom of this list, this place type, placement type, and place name, are three filters that basically just apply to place-based inventory. And there's some really unique things in here some really unique filtering options within these that we can see. As my screen is frozen up, 1 second. Sorry, I'm just gonna hit refresh really quick. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so let me get that media class one applied that I was just looking at. There we go. And let's take a look at those, oops, wrong category. Here we go. Let's take a look at those other filters that I was talking about. So place type, as Scott mentioned, in the process of measuring and auditing place-based, there's a lot that we need to understand about the inventory itself and also, the places where they reside and how people interact with those places themselves. So, things like gyms have very different times that people spend there and activities that people do within a gym versus something like a theater or a hotel, or even in this we have things like, I think there's like medical office or I think hospital. So these are just kind of some good filters that can help you really hone in on a specific kind of place that you might want to look. If it's a retail environment or something like that, this is where you would go to sort of filter at that level. And there's some really great stuff in there. You can do multiple different kinds. So then just below that, we have placement type, which is even one level further than that. So within the place itself, where is the actual spot located? So, and I think if you hover over these, I believe, it's catching up to me. But I believe if you hover over these, and it's just loading right now, but it will give you a brief description of what each of these are. But some of these are fairly self-explanatory, entrance, exit, at the cash register, at a pump. So if it's like a gas station kind of thing. So these are just some of the different placement types that you can have. There we go. You can have within a place. Sorry, this is, something's freezing up on me. I'm gonna just hit refresh one more time. I think I have too many things running. Let me just close some stuff in my background. Apologies about that, sorry. Okay. Oops. There we go. Sorry about that. So let's catch back up to where we were. So I had just gone through placement type, and let me show you. Yeah, so like I was saying, if you hover over these, you can see, a one-to-one, any device that's designed to be seen by people in an intimate vicinity. So sitting at a table at a restaurant. So if you've been to like a Chili's or an Applebee's in the last, however many years, they have those tablets that end up sitting on your table. So this might be that kind of display. So that's what you can find in that placement type. And again, if you hover over any of these filters, they'll give you a description. And then place type is specific to the actual place themselves. So these are individual places. So say I searched, let me see, like 7-Eleven. If I know how to spell 11. Yeah. So you can see these are all different 7-Eleven places that are, that exist in the place-based system that have been, mapped out and, geo-fenced and all that. So there's, an area that they, that they take up for when someone's within that area. So there's just all these different, different things like, different places specifically that you can go and search through. And again, the scenario and the sort of examples that I'm going to do today are going to start off, or one of the examples will start off with just showing how to use measured inventory that's in here, or inventory that's in here that does have measures right now. As I mentioned, a handful of the stuff that's in here is still unmeasured, or still the measures are being added in. Sorry, this is hanging up on me. Sorry, let me just try something really quick. Sorry, 1 second.
And just while Brian is doing that, there was a chat or a question rather about this happening to others, and it is a bit of a known issue that we are working on, how trying to reduce any of the latency that people are experiencing. So we do apologize for any technical issues we may be experiencing today, and just we are definitely intermix, and we know about it, and we are working to alleviate some of these issues. And I was actually just trying to do it on my side so I could jump in and start sharing screen.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think I should be in just a sec. I'm just opening up a different browser. I realized that my Chrome browser earlier, sorry, let me share my screen. My Chrome browser earlier told me I had an update, and I forgot to do it right before this, so that might be my bad. Okay, so let's try this. Let's see if I can get this to work instead. Trying this on Firefox. So let's just catch back up to where we were. So I'm going to filter to just place-based, apply. And as I mentioned, I just want to look at the inventory that's currently got measures in the system. And if you ever want to do that kind of thing, within the media attributes filter here, we have this audit status filter, and I'm just going to click measured. So just only things that currently have measures in the system. And then from there, we can go and we'll take a look at sort of a specific example and sort of how to, navigate using place-based in the system. And also, like I mentioned, I'll show how to use, if you're an operator who's got inventory in here who doesn't have measures loaded in just yet, just kind of maybe a bit of a workaround that you can still use to try to get some interesting audience insights from that. So I've got just the measured audited inventory down here. You can see on these sort of things on the bottom. And now I'm going to go to I guess I'll go to the define target tab, and I'll start, let me start with the market. That's what I want to do next. So for this example, I was taking a look in the Chicago DMA. Let's get that applied. And there's a pop-up that happens here when you apply your market. And every time this happens, or every time this pops up, I like to explain kind of what's going on here, because I think this is an interesting thing to sort of understand. But basically, this is asking me, do I want to filter my inventory and my audience base to the same market? Because this assign market function does two things at once. Sort of the geographic filter might be what you'd expect it to do. You set Chicago DMA, you only look at Chicago inventory. But by doing this or by hitting yes here, this is also saying that I want to look at Chicago inventory and a Chicago audience, or home base of Chicago. So the in-market versus out-of-market is now based around the Chicago DMA. And then I'll go and I'll add 18 plus. As Scott mentioned, there are some of the base audiences are loaded in for place-based use right now. We're adding more of those as we go along. But right now I'm just going to use 18 plus just
for everybody's awareness. So when we talk about base audiences, we're talking about persons 0 plus, 5 plus, 18 plus, and 21 plus. So those kind of core audiences are available for a variety of different place-based operators in inventory.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Sorry.
That's okay.
So we're zooming in. Okay. So now we're just taking a look at some of these are just, like I mentioned, these are just the place-based units in the Chicago DMA that currently have measures. This is by no means all of the inventory that's in the Chicago DMA for place-based. This is just kind of what I'm looking at right now based on this scenario. But as I was kind of in here the other day, just kind of looking around and sort of prepping for this webinar, I noticed that the shape of sorry, I'm trying to get a good zoom so you can see the full extent of it. That's pretty good. So I noticed that the place-based in Chicago, at least this place-based inventory here that I was looking at, it follows a pretty interesting pattern. And if anyone's at all familiar with the train lines in Chicago, this actually follows those pretty exactly, because it turns out that a lot of these are at those transit stations themselves. So just kind of as a little aside, I was sometime last summer, I think, I was in Chicago, and I actually stayed sort of out here, sort of near O'Hare, and this unit looked right about where my the train stop that I was using that visit was, and I just kind of wanted to show that, you know, if you're at all familiar with roadside in the Insights suite, and you've kind of used it before, you'll know that when you go in and you click on a single unit like this, you get this pop-up that gives you a little overview of sort of what it is and where it is. And then, yes, you can see, so this one, Rosemont Concourse, that was exactly the train stop that I was using when I visited that time. So I just thought that it was kind of a nice, kind of an interesting thing to see how these all kind of converged around the loop in Chicago. But it's also really interesting to note, you know, this functions virtually identically to roadside. You know, you can even, you know, down to the top contributing zip codes and DMAs. This is especially interesting. Generally with this zip code, the sort of zip code breakdowns like this, as we're seeing here with this DMA one, generally a large percentage or a majority of the audience comes from one or maybe a couple of the sort of areas, but this one's got a pretty even spread, which is interesting. And I assume that this is probably because it's so close to the airport, it probably doesn't get a lot of local traffic, which is just kind of how I'm reading into this here. But again, as you can see, we've got, you know, in this sort by dropdown, these are all the same metrics that we can use to filter and sort as we can with roadside. And again, you know, this menu over here on the right-hand side functions the same way. So do these spot summary list. So one of the really cool things about the way that place-based is integrated into the Insights suite is that there really isn't a learning curve to sort of get over from one of the sort of media classes to the other. You know, if you know how to go in here and use roadside, you know how to go in here and use place-based as well. And so I'm actually going to show, you know, how you can go about that in sort of a planning way as well. I'll head over to the workspace module in just a second. But I think it's just really cool. You can have a very holistic look at sort of the entire out-of-home ecosystem. You know, you can go in and just say, oh, maybe I wasn't even looking for a place-based unit, but these 3 or 4 are perfect for exactly what I need. So, you know, you kind of stumble on it the same way you would any bit of inventory when you go and explore like this. So there's really cool things about how this sort of functions. And it's, again, very not steep learning curve, which I think is really great. So I'm going to head over to the workspace module and just kind of show how you can run, you know, just set up a market plan. And I won't run an inventory plan just for the sake of time, but I'll show you how you can do that as well. I believe I set up for myself a place-based project. Let me find that. Sorry, here we go, place-based example. And I'm going to add a scenario for myself. and we will call this Chicago. Oh, you can see my other one back there that I was sort of preparing for. We'll call it Chicago 02. Why not? So I'm going to go and set this up as a multiple market plan. So I'm going to set my audience first. And if you are not that familiar with the workspace module or with setting up a market plan or an inventory plan, one of the really cool things about the way that this is set up, all of these parameters up here, sort of above this horizontal line right here, all of these parameters affect both your market plan and your inventory plan. So, you know, whatever you set to explore your market with the market plan is the same things that you can use to actually go and run reports on actual units with your inventory plan. So I'm going to go through and just set this up for a couple things, basically the same way I was doing it in the Explore module. Demographics, age, do 18 plus. And I could add a couple other things, but just for the sake of simplicity, I'll do 18 plus. I don't need 0 plus right now, that's fine. And let me also, in addition to adding Chicago, let me add Dallas, because I was taking a look at Dallas when I was preparing, sort of going through and looking at this, and I thought I found some interesting things with that as well. So add those two as individuals. And this is actually that same pop-up that I made note of in the Explore module, where it's basically just asking, do you want to filter your inventory and your audience base to the same geography, which I do. So I'm going to say yes. And you could say no if you wanted to do sort of a more complex report and look at, you know, inventory and market that were not necessarily the same, but I'm just going to keep it simple for this one. We're going to look at all operators right now. I'll do 1 week, and so we've got my locations here, and let me just add a couple media types. So just a little bit of an overview, just to sort of explain these filters. There's a lot of different options within these filters to add media types in a few different ways. And it's really just kind of gives a lot of options for however works best for your workflow. So, you know, sometimes you do want to filter sort of at the media class level. Sometimes you want to go by structure type. And this is interesting now because structure types now both apply to place-based and roadside. So, you know, something that's freestanding could be either a roadside inventory like a bulletin, or place-based like a kiosk or something that stands on its own. So, and media type, this one specifically is based on the size of the frame. So each of these are kind of overarching categories that you can use to arrive at the same things. They're all sort of filters within each other. And if there is something that you're looking for and you're kind of having trouble finding it, I found that a lot of times people like to look in the operator media name one, and these are sort of the more colloquial and sort of commonly used names. They're very specific. These ones are very good if you want to filter and grab a few things at once. But if you're looking for a specific thing, such as, you know, transit shelters, and let me add that one, and I'll come back and let's add a separate one. 1 second.
You know, and just as you're doing that, Brian, and waiting, you know, like one other good best practice we've discovered over time is that, you know, if you really want to be totally sure you're filtering for just place-based or just roadside, you know, it is good to maybe start with that media class up front. If that's not as important for you, and it's okay if you're maybe getting some place-based in with some of your freestanding stuff, then you don't need to do that. But, you know, if it's very important for you that you want to look at a bit, you know, very specific type, you know, you don't have to add all these filters in, but that does help also.
Exactly, yeah.
You're getting narrowed in as well.
So let's see, what else? I added transit shelters, so let me add posters, and then I want to add a place-based metric. So just 1 second, let me open that back up. Okay. And I know, specifically, I wanted to look for, I know Volta has some charging stations in the Chicago market. And since I know I'm definitely running Chicago, I don't know if they have any in Dallas, but that's exactly what this kind of thing is good to figure out. So, you know, I've got my transit shelters. Let me add posters again. Just make sure I added it the right way. And I've got my Volta charging stations. And one of the really cool things is, you know, even though this one is a place-based media and the other two are roadside media, that. Yep. Okay. So even though, posters and transit shelters are both roadside and the Volta charging station specifically is a place-based media, they all function exactly the same when you run them in your market plans or your inventory plans. And again, that's one of the really cool features about this, is that there really isn't anything different that you have to do or that you have to learn or understand in order to use this as part of your overall planning goals or really anything like that. So, okay, so you can see we've got our Chicago market for 18 plus and our Dallas Fort Worth market for 18 plus, and these are both coming in here. If I had, oops, I left the TRP goal way too high. Here, I wanted to set this at about 30. Sorry, this was the last thing. Let me go back and address this. So once you've set all the things that you need for your market plan or your inventory plan, the last thing that you need is this delivery goals. And so you can set, say you have a TRP goal for your plan. You can also use target in market impressions or a reach percentage. I'm going to use TRPs and 30, not 200 like I accidentally did. But so yeah, make sure you adjust your goals to whatever you want them for. And had I added multiple audiences, like if I come back up here while that's loading, I could have added a few different audiences. Here I have my, oh, they finished. Okay. I have my two markets. If I had multiple audiences, I could toggle over using the select audiences here. I could toggle between all of them and look at them all in a list, like I'm looking at my markets here, or I could toggle between them, but I only have the one for right now. So, okay. So we have, oh, it was rerunning. Okay. So we can look at the Chicago one while the other one's coming in. So my TRP goal was 30. So this got me just above my 30 TRPs. And you can see even at the high level, I'm reaching about a quarter of the 18 plus market with this. ReachNet, the ReachNet is the individual people, roughly the individual people that this will reach. Actually, you know what? I'm glad I didn't even open these up yet, because I wanted to take a look at the two markets at sort of a high level here. Even though our TRPs are exactly the same, our audience is exactly the same, I always think this is really interesting to see, sort of just from a planning perspective, the different metrics and the different sort of responses from the marketplace itself that you get, in two different markets. Even though, we have everything up here set up exactly the same, I think it's just interesting to see, the different reach net, the different, amount of times that people are being reached, total target impressions, really all that. But let's take a look at the Chicago one. Okay, so this is telling me, so in order to reach my 30 TRPs, it's saying I would need about this many transit shelters, about this many of the Volta charging stations, and then about this many posters. And then you can see here the resulting TRPs. And one of the cool things that I always like to point out, if you open up this operators dropdown, you can see all of the operators that have this media type in this market. But one of the other really cool features about this is that, say you wanted, say you decided, okay, maybe I want to allocate a little bit more to transit shelters. Maybe I want 15 TRPs from transit shelters. You could go in and click right here and type in 15 and then hit update right here. And this would rerun based on whatever you change in here. So you could change the number of spots you were thinking you might want here, or you could change the plan goal itself. So had I not chosen TRPs, this would probably be reach percent or something like that. So it's really cool. You can actually go in and just adjust this kind of how you could in our ADS system. That's basically what this is modeled after. OPlan, my mistake. And then let's just take a look at Dallas out of curiosity. So, okay, so Volta charging station posters. So this basically just tells me there's no transit shelters in Dallas. And that's fine. I still got my 30 TRPs. It distributed it a little bit differently, but I still got the 30 TRPs that I wanted. And then from here, what you can do is, if you want to run an inventory plan with actual metrics and actual, inventory and reports, all you have to do is switch over to here. And there's a couple different ways that you can actually add inventory to your report. I won't do it. I'll just explain how to do it. So I just clicked this add inventory button right here. And this will allow you 3 different ways to actually add inventory to your plans. The first here, the load file. So say you're working on an RFP or something, and you've got a CSV file with sort of the spot information that you have in it, or the spot IDs that you need. Basically, to upload this CSV, I believe the 3 required fields are an ID field, and then a start date for your campaign and an end date for your campaign. And then you can just browse for that CSV, upload it, and then on the next screen, you can match out the match up the different headers and columns there, and then it'll import just from there. Another way that you can do it is from an inventory set. So you can see these are all different inventory sets. I have a lot of them, all different inventory sets that I have added to my account. I could add one or multiple here, and it would all, it would all change depending on, where these are. It would give me varying different results, but I'm not going to add anything because I don't think I have anything saved here. But and then finally, you could add either by Geopath spot IDs or the operators IDs. So you have these in an Excel file or in an email or something like that. You can just paste these right in here and then apply them that way. And then there is one more way to actually add inventory. And this will basically include everything in the market that exists that meets your parameters up here. So whatever you have set up here will be brought into your report by clicking this Add Inventory from Filters button. And what I mean by that is specifically in Chicago and Dallas, it'll pull in all of the existing units for these three media types against this audience. And then from there, I could export the entire thing. And then, you could go about it, in Excel and go through, or in the plan itself, you can go and remove or add certain ones. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to touch on that. I didn't want to add anything because I didn't have anything here that I wanted to.
Can you,
yeah.
Just before you jump away from that, if you can click back to the inventory plan.
Mm-hmm.
I think one other important, a couple of things, if I know we're not diving too deep into the inventory plan today, but we've done it in the last couple of webinars. And so again, like I said, by the end of this call, I'll show you where you can go access some of that information. And also too, our Learning Lab has tutorials on how to do a lot of this stuff as well. And again, you can always reach out to us at geekout@geopath.org. So if you need more help with this, definitely reach out to us. The thing I did want to talk about is that the checkbox there, include inventory outside of markets within summaries. That's an important thing to know about. We know oftentimes you may be wanting to run multi-market reports, but you only want to look at, for this example here, like I only want to look at inventory in Chicago for my Chicago market report, and then same for Dallas. I only want to look at inventory that's generating impressions within the Dallas DMA. That said, because the level of granularity we do have available to us allows you to look at, impressions derived from inventory outside of the market that is reaching the people from Dallas. So if you're looking to run a report that, again, I want to look at the Chicago inventory, generating impressions among the Chicago market, you want to make sure you click that box off. And that's, I think, a fairly common use case. And so I just wanted to point that out for everybody. And then you could export all those reports as outside, as individual reports as well. I know that was a request a while back too as well. So you can do all of that now within the workspace module.
Yep, absolutely. That's a great point. And speaking of export, I just wanted to make mention of that because I realized I didn't. So when you're all set with whatever you've run in your plans, so say I wanted to export these two market plans that I ran, or anything in your inventory plans, if you go to this export scenario button up here and then hit export as CSV, oh yes, always make sure to save your report before exporting. It'll ask you anyway. So I have these three options here. I could export my market plan, the inventory plan, or if I had any places or points of interest that were related to my plan. Here, let me see if I can find some. I don't know if I have anything that's Chicago related. Yeah, okay, so some Chevy dealerships in Chicago, sure. So, I have this set of places that's just automobile dealerships in the Chicago DMA. Say this was related to whatever your plan was that you were working on. Now when I go to export, and export is, oh yeah, save again. Now when I go to export, this places export will basically just give me a report exactly of what we see here, just the address data. That way, if there's some, points of interest or addresses or retail locations or whatever it is that are associated with the plan you're working on, you can have everything in one place and export it all together as well. So there was one more feature I kind of wanted to show. This whole time we've so far spent talking about, the place-based inventory in here that right now does have the metrics in the system. But there are a good amount of place-based inventory spots that are still having their metrics updated and added. So if you are, one of those place-based media operators or whatever, and you wanted to go in and still use some of the audience data and understand, where does my inventory fall in relation to this audience or that kind of thing. There's kind of a workaround you can do to make some custom maps and stuff like that I think is really worthwhile showing. And also, it's just a great feature in the Insights Suite that I don't think a ton of people still know about. So let me just close that. Sorry. So in the Explore module here, right over here, in the top left-hand corner, you have this floating purple button that says Inventory Library. And right now, what we're looking at is the Inventory Library. That's kind of the standard view of the Explore module. It's, if you've been in here before, this is what you go to by default in the Explore module. But briefly, we can also do, let me just switch over so you can see it. We've got our Places library, which is our points of interest search. And I wasn't going to use this for the example, but I just kind of wanted to show where this was. And so you can just do a search here for points of interest nationally. And then you can narrow it down by, geographies, or you can do specific shapes or stuff like that. So I just wanted to show what was in this sort of bubble here. But the feature that I'm talking about is this population library. And this actually is a really cool feature that allows you to go in and map out the sort of spread of any of the 8,000 audiences that we have in the Insights Suite, or 8,000 plus, I should say. And what you can do with this, in addition to just mapping out these audiences, you can actually overlay locations, and you can overlay retail locations or points of interest. But what I meant was you can overlay inventory sets and pieces of inventory and just kind of see, where does my inventory fall? Where does this audience live? And, maybe these units are pretty close by. Maybe we can go for these. And this is just kind of a sort of a workaround that you can utilize. This is really good for everybody to know, but just while some of the place-based is still being loaded in, this is a really cool way to sort of think about things. So let me go and let me find, so I want to change this select population. So this is a exactly mirrors the audience selection in the other parts of the Insights Suite, but in the Explore module itself. So this is exactly the same here. And then again, assign markets the same way. But what I want to do here is, right now I'm looking at, let me close everything so you can see. So we're looking at, I think this is just persons 0 plus. Yes, total population persons 0 plus. So we don't really have an audience set here just yet. And we're looking, these are all the different DMAs. That's what we currently have it broken down as. But using this define population tab right here, in this header row, you don't even need to open up this lower part, but in this header row, you can actually change what your breakouts are here for the map. So let me change this to county, and we can actually get a lot closer. I think it's like 3,400 counties in the country, or so, maybe even way more than that. But there's a lot of close detail now that we can actually go in and explore. And this is something that we're going to be expanding to be able to go a little bit further as well. But so we've got our county here. And so, I was thinking what would be kind of a good audience to show. You could really do this with anything, but I figured, with the holiday coming up, might be a lot of people out there doing sort of outdoors activities, camping, hiking, that kind of thing. So I thought, there's a cool hiking, backpacking, people who've gone in the last 12 months, I thought this might be an interesting one to look at just for the holiday weekend coming up. So let's just hit apply there. And so at first, we'll see sort of the national spread here. And I can, we can go in and look at specific areas more closely, but this will just apply this audience to the whole US broken out by county. So once this loads up, we'll take a look. Let me close this one. So now let's take a look at these units over here, or not units. So we've got our audience here, and these are basically, this right now is filtering composition percentage high to low, but we could do low to high or filter by comp index. Generally, they kind of mirror each other, composition index and percentage, but not always. I don't think so. But okay, so we can just see here at the national level how these are broken out. I'm going to zoom into the Chicago area because that's where we were doing our example earlier. And what I went and I did sort of before this, I went and I saved an inventory set of some of the place-based units in Chicago that are currently not, they currently don't have their measures in the Insights suite yet. So I wanted to take a look at some of those. So in order to add an inventory set or something else to a map like this, if you open up this Layers and Display Options tab, basically everything you have on this left side here in available layers are all things that you can add to your map. So I'm going to go to my inventory sets, and I think this one is called, it might be like Place-Based Chicago something. Here we go. Place-Based Chicago unmeasured or no measures or something like that. So I have this now over in my added selected layers, and I can actually go, and if I click on the colored dot itself, I can change the color of the thing itself. I can make it a different icon. I'll leave it as little dots, I guess. And this teal's it's kind of nice. So I'm just going to hit Apply View, and what this will do, it might take a second, but this will go in and apply my placed or the inventory set that I saved, these place-based units in the Chicago area. It'll overlay this on top of this map here. And sort of while this is still loading up, I could add as many different inventory sets as I wanted, or if I had, some retail or point of interest locations. Oh, there we go. There you can see. I could add those as well. There's a few different other things that you can add, but this is just kind of, now if we take a look, this is this hiking and backpacking in the last 12 months. And these are just a handful of units, of place-based units in the Chicago DMA that currently don't have their measures in the system. So I thought, if you were trying to go down this mental path and try to think, how could I sort of evaluate my inventory and look at some of the audiences and stuff, this would be a really great way to do it, because now we're looking at the home locations and where these people live and how they break out by, counties and or CBSA or DMA. And you can just kind of see the proximity of how your, or how any piece of inventory falls nearby. So, it's not necessarily saying that this is the audience of these units. It's just saying that this is the audience and these are where these units are. But from that, you might be able to derive some pretty interesting things.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, as we've said previously, like all the metrics for this inventory is going to get entered into the system pretty quickly over the next handful of weeks. But this might be a nice workaround, or if you're a planner wanting to look at a certain operator's inventory and understand, how does it look against some of these audiences? We thought this was a nice way to be able to use some of the value of what's in the tool already to help at least give some directionality to it, when you're looking at some of this inventory before the final metrics are all in, or if some of these if you want to look at inventory against some of these behavioral audiences that still just have the core audiences in there. So
yeah, absolutely. So did anybody have any questions about this? I think that was everything I was covering. So do you want to switch back over, Scott?
Sure, yeah. And again, if there are questions, please feel free to send them to us. I know we're getting to the top of the hour, or getting close to that. So I just wanted to just sum up and go through any last things. So again, if there's any questions, please send them. And I know I've mentioned a couple times throughout this session that I would show you where you could find past webinars. So this is a screenshot of our website. So if you go over to the Geek Out tab and scroll down a little bit, you'll see our out of home office hours section. And always as a thumbnail, you see the 6 most recent sessions that we've done, but then you could always click right here where it says click here. That'll take you to our YouTube channel that has all of our past out of home office hours. So you can peruse through any of those. And like I said, the recent one that we did with Julie last Thursday is here as well. And then there are a couple really interesting ones. Not that they all aren't interesting, but some of the real recent ones that you may not have caught that might be of interest is we had a group of agency panelists, and we talked about how they're currently navigating COVID-19 and looking forward to the future and how it's impacting planning and everything like that, as well as doing one with similar panel with independent operators. And then there's also a 2-hour session that we did with a virtual independent operator seminar that there's a lot of good research that was presented and insights on, just selling ideas as well as, different, like I said, research that was collected and presented. So a couple interesting things you might want to check out as well on this, our past out of home office hours. And again, I know I've talked about this before again, so apologies if you've heard me say this already, but I know there's oftentimes people joining these sessions for the first time. So in case you've missed it, just want to reiterate that, we've put out 2 data solutions over the past handful of months. One, our daily mobility dashboard, and then our impressions variation dashboard. So both of these can be found in the Insights suite. So the daily mobility dashboard really helps understand, day-to-day monitoring of population activity, and it's at the CBSA level and state level. So it's against the 2019 average, and you could see how much daily average miles traveled is above or below that, and how different markets, how movement within the different markets is coming back since the lows of the March and April. And then on the other side of that, there's an impressions variation dashboard and the subsequent reports you can generate from that. And so this is for members only. While the mobility dashboard is available to anybody, and there's links on our website that you can go to and find. This impression variation dashboard is for members only, and it's really to help members understand by geography and by media type, or media format type, so it doesn't get down to the individual unit level, but it's at media type level, understand how the variation of impression delivery given COVID against against our predicted measures. And there's a bunch of support and training to go along with it. Again, these can all be linked to from our website. They're also in our Geek Out library. So how to understand these specifically are for the impression variation dashboard, at least the screenshots, how to interpret the dashboard reports, FAQs. There's a set of FAQs for the mobility dashboard as well, and then understanding the methodology. And then again, there's a version of that for both dashboards. And also some video tutorials for both. Again, the screenshot happens to be for the variation dashboard. All of these can be linked to and seen from our homepage. And like I said, they're also available in our Geek Out library. And then, I don't know if you've been following along, we also each week on Mondays, we send out in our newsletter a top DMA report. So giving you data, using that mobility data on how, I don't want to say traffic, but how movement and miles traveled is changing across the different DMAs, as well as we do a weekly report on state and national DMAs in terms of that similar data. And then we've also provided some other stuff about spending across the DMAs. And that's it. I just wanted to pause and see if there's any other questions and also thank everybody. Again, if you do have questions you think about after the session, reach out at geekout@geopath.org, or if you haven't been able to use the dashboard, you want a little tutorial, we're happy to help. Whatever you need, this is a great and easy way to reach out and get some help. It's geekout@geopath.org. So just want to check in, Brian, any other questions that came in while we were talking?
No, I don't see anything.
Okay, great. Again, just want to thank everybody, and we'll see you next time. Again, we'll be announcing our next set of sessions very soon. And thanks
everybody.
Wow. Great.